Okay. So in the Gemara we raised two halachas, two things that make tefillin and mezuzah different. Number one, in the order that we'll learn it today, even though in the Gemara the order is different. Number one is shirtut, the issue of scoring the parchment, that is, making little scratches in the parchment to make sure your lines are straight, number one. And number two, the issue of what material we use. The klaf, which is, or the duchsostos, or gvil. And we'll see, the gvil is the animal hide as we have it, as you remove it from the animal. Klaf, now that gvil, that animal hide, is split into two. The outer one is called klaf, the inner one is called duchsostos. And the Gemara had a back and forth as to which one should be used for what. Is it a requirement? Is it just an added bonus? So we're going to get to all of that. And what's going to emerge is something very beautiful, or very interesting, I should say, with respect to the limitations or guidelines on when you should take on a chumrah and when you should think that a chumrah is too much. It's going to be in parentheses, but it's going to be a beautiful idea of understanding when you're going too far with your chumras. So what we're looking at here is the Alter B'Shulchan Aruch in Orach Chaim Siman Lamed Beis. So the Alter wrote the Shulchan Aruch, a code of Jewish law, actually twice. The second version he wrote much later was completely burnt, with the exception of maybe 4 or so chapters. The first version that he wrote much earlier in his life. Most of it is available. Most of Orach Chaim, most of part 1 of the Shulchan Aruch is available. Most of Yer Dedeya, which is part 2 of the Shulchan Aruch, is not available. It's been burnt in this famous fire that happened in the town of Viyadi. So the laws of Sefer Torah and Mezuzah are to be found in Yer Dedeya, on the second section of the Shulchan Aruch, of the 4 sections. So we don't have the Alter Rebbe's writing there. But Hilchos Tefillin, the laws of Tefillin, are in Orach Chaim. Orach Chaim is the laws, as we had occasion to discuss in another video. Orach Chaim is the laws that go through a Jewish routine, starting with daily, weekly, monthly, and annually. So Tefillin is part of a person's daily routine, so the laws of Tefillin are in Orach Chaim. So here we're looking at chapter 32, in Orach Chaim, the laws of Tefillin. So let's see. Ches. It's the last halacha on the page here. Ha-Tefillin, the Tefillin, Einim k'mezuzah, are not like a mezuzah, she'tzichat shirtut malach l'meshim Sinai, which a mezuzah requires scoring, as a law that's been passed down from Sinai, as we learned in the Gemara yesterday. Each and every line needs that scoring, needs that scratch to hold it in place. That's the law with mezuzah. But tefillin, when it comes to tefillin, it does not need a scratch to tell you where the line is, with the exception of the top line. That actually comes from the Taisus in our Gemara. Why does the top line need a scratch? Because it's a rabbinic prohibition against to write 3 words of a pasuk, a scriptural verse, without a scratch holding it in line. So at least the first line requires, rabbinically speaking, to have a scratch, but the rest of the lines in your tefillin don't require it. As we shall explain when we get to Yer Dedeya, which again we don't have. But the other lines in your tefillin, besides the top line, do not need the scratch, the scoring. Because the top line, the top scoring, becomes the line for all that's under, as shall be explained there in Yer Dedeya. Now, the question becomes, when you don't have a requirement, should you do it? When you don't have a requirement, you do it anyway. Right? This is it a chumrah, as an added bonus? That's what I said before. What's going to emerge is limitations or guidelines on when you should choose to do a chumrah even though you're not required to. We're talking about tefillin now. We're talking about making tefillin. You have to score the tefillin, so you don't have to. Mezuzah is required by a law tradition from Moshe Rabbeinu. Tefillin, you don't have to. And the question becomes, even though I don't have to, should I?
There's no prohibition.
No prohibition, but nonetheless, should I anyway?
I was going to ask you, how does it? Do you know how does he write in a straight line if he doesn't have the?
That's what we're going to get to right now.
Okay.
Now he says like this. Ve'ein le'lahachmer.
Everything like this. I don't know.
Yeah. Now ve'ein le'lahachmer. He should not be stringent. V'lashartet b'chol hashittas, and to make a scratch in every line. Why? This idea I'm about to read comes from the Yerushalmi, which Tosfos makes note of in our Gemara. The Jerusalem Talmud, as opposed to the Babylonian Talmud that we learn. So there it says, anybody who's exempt from doing something, and does it, nikra hedjit is called a simpleton. Yeah. Because you're over-expressing it becomes a borderline showing off. You're not required to do something, you're doing it anyway, what for? But let's see the guidelines. Let's learn the guidelines. But that's what the Yerushalmi says. We're going to get there. We're going to cover everything. We will cover everything. Well, when we're done, if we miss something, please remind me. But until we're done, let's wait.
Excuse me, sometimes there's a reaction. I hear a statement. There's something saying.
Let's absorb and then react.
Yeah, that's right.
So the Yerushalmi says, this is what the Yerushalmi says, someone who does something that's not required is called a hedjit. I translate the word hedjit as simpleton, but it's not really. Hedjit's like a...
Shoah?
No. Hedjit is like it is simpleton, but it's like it's simpleton in a derogatory way. Sometimes simpleton could be in a positive sense, as in like person simple and wholesome, purity, innocent. But this is not innocence. Hedjit is simpleton, not in an innocent sense. It's like it's borderline. It's like foolish behavior almost, if you will. It's like childish behavior. Immaturity, yeah, kind of like that. But, however, if he doesn't know how to make straight, if he doesn't know how to write straight without that scoring, so then he should make a scoring on every single line, so that the writing should be nice, should be straight, and equal. Because the pasuk says, the pasuk says, and we say it in our Yasher, this is my God and I will beautify him, and our sages derive from the verse that you should you should make his Torah mitzvahs beautiful. Hidur mitzvah. So now we're crossing into two things at once. On the one hand, we say Hidur mitzvah, you should make your mitzvahs beautiful, even if you're not required. On the other hand, we just finished telling you that it's foolish to be doing chumras that you're not supposed to. So how do we find this balance? This is what Alter Rebbe is about to get to us. But before that, even if he knows how to make a straight line without scoring the parchment. But he makes scoring, he makes these lines. They lift of Yosher to make the writing even nicer, the Yosher Yasher and straighter than he would have anyway. He's not considered, what's the word we're using now? Immature. For making these lines, because he's not doing it for no reason. He's doing it because it's going to be even nicer than had he not done it. Because he's not doing it out of a stringency that's not required. But to do it with a straighter or nicer, shohidir mitzvah, which is hidir mitzvah. Right. And now let's go to the footnote Rabbi was talking about. Footnote number 87, Ayin Zion. So you'll see there's two. Sorry, what did I say? 77. Yes, Ayin Zion. So you'll see there are two fonts in the footnotes. Some are italics and some are bold. So all the bold footnotes were added by the editors of this most recent edition of the Shulchan Aruch, of Alter Shulchan Aruch, the editors of the library, the Chabad library in 770. But the italics one were to be found in the original. Now, we're not sure if it comes from the Alter Rebbe himself, or from the Alter Rebbe's brother, or from one of his sons, but wherever there's italics, it means it was written by someone of that earlier generation, not just the editors today. That's why it's differentiated in different fonts.
The editors say it in bold?
Sorry?
The editors, they added the bold?
The editors stay in the regular text, which looks bold compared to the italics. The italics comes from the original text. We're not sure exactly who wrote that original text, but it comes from the original text. Okay. That's why you'll see it's... there are scholars who spend their time analyzing these italics to see why did he choose to put these footnotes in, not the other ones, and all kinds of things. But anyway, over here is almost a few lines, not just a note. So we're going to look at the italics. First, it gives you the source, Yerushalmi. As I mentioned, it comes from the Jerusalem Talmud. And then the bold and the regular font, the editors tell us where in the Jerusalem Talmud, and it tells you that it's brought in Tosfos in our Gemara. And then the italics continues. Ayin b'Perush Rambam. Look at the Rambam's commentary, Perek Gimel in chapter 3 of Sotah. The Rambam's first work was a commentary on the Mishnah. So the writer here tells you, look at that Mishnah, to Machmir, where the implication is the Yerushalmi, that in the Yerushalmi where it says that a person who takes on stringency when he's not required is immature. That's the word we're using. Mighty, it's referring to miskavin, that he does it with the intention laharis chasidus lebnei adam, to show off to everybody else his piety, and that's why he does it.
He's more like a chitzen.
He's a chitzen in the language of Chassidus, of Chassidic vernacular. He's doing it to show off his piety. If that's the case, immature. Don't do it to Tehedjit. But that's what Al Rebbe says. If you're doing it because it's going to look nicer with the lines, then go ahead, hey, do it. That's going to look nicer. Whether it's going to be straight, or even if you know how to do it straight, but it's going to be straighter or nicer, then you're not doing it to show off your piety. You're doing it because it's not going to come out nicer because of the result. Now let's see Al Rebbe elaborates more. Top of the next page. And we don't say in the Yerushalmi, Shekol HaPotim HaDavar, etc., that anybody who does something that's not required is a hedjit, is immature. We only say this when he does it out of a sense of stringency, as opposed to doing it for making the mitzvah more beautiful. And as we put it in the footnote there, stringency, not just stringency, but to show off. Chassidus, to show off his piety. Now, comes a parenthesis. Now, there's a big discussion as to why the Alter puts certain things in parentheses and certain things not. What emerges is something like this. It's important to know this as we go forward. This Shulchan Aruch that we're looking at is Alter's first version of the Shulchan Aruch, which the Maggid of Mezrich, Alter's Rebbe, Maggid of Mezrich, who's the successor of the Baal Shem Tov, instructed him to do this. And the instruction the Maggid gave him was that in the same way the Shulchan Aruch collected all the opinions since the last collection, the Torah, and compiled them and put them into a Shulchan Aruch, so should you. Since the Shulchan Aruch writing by Rabbi Yosef Cairo and the Ramah until the day of Alter Rebbe is some 200, maybe 300 years, somewhere there, and new opinions have emerged, the Shach, the Taz, the Magen Avraham, this one, that one. So you should do the same thing, collect all the opinions and put it all together and come to some conclusion. So the body, the primary of the text of the Alter Rebbe is actually just almost always or often straight quotations from previous sources, re-edited and refined the language in such places. But not so often do you find out there was chiddush of his own chiddush, because by the instruction of his teacher he was told to collect, so he's collecting. His chiddushim will come in different forms. His chiddushim will come in a small minor variation, change from the text, in the order of the way the text emerges, sometimes in the way he rules, based on some added logic, but after collecting texts. And another time, sometimes he'll add his own svara in a parenthesis, or in a kontesachern. So parenthesis is oftentimes out there, but is really his own thing. So everything he said till now can be derived, as he saw from the Perish Mishnayos, and even the Shulchan Aruch mentioned something like along these lines. The original Shulchan Aruch of Yosef Cairo.
So it's like its own take on things when he puts it in parentheses.
Kind of, yes.
Yeah.
Kind of that's the case. I even saw, I saw one case that writes in parentheses something which doesn't come from anywhere else, and I saw writing from the Rebbe says, it would seem to me that the Rebbe's personal opinion is like it says in the parentheses. In other words, you would think parentheses is secondary, but the Rebbe's telling you that's his own opinion he's sticking in there after already quoting everybody else. Anyway, so
that's like the art school square brackets, what they do today.
I guess. So now let's see the Alter Rebbe's svara here. The Alter Rebbe is going to further articulate for us when and how a person should take on a chumrah, and when it's immature to take a chumrah. He's going to further break this down. So it says like this: the only time we say, right, read the parentheses, the continuation. The only time we say that a person who's exempt from a stringency and takes it on is considered immature is only when he does it as a chumrah. The makim in a scenario, says the Alter Rebbe, shalayava de iser, in a place where he will not, shalayava de iser mayine b'chum brazu, in a place where by not doing that stringency, it won't lead him to doing a prohibition. In other words, there's no usage, there's no utility to that chumrah. It means whether he has the extra chumrah there or doesn't have the chumrah there, he's not going to falter and do something wrong. Because if he's going to falter and do something wrong, then that chumrah, that stringency, is not useless. It's not just for showing off. There's a utility here. It's holding him back from doing something wrong. The gam likewise, ein by mishum hiddur mitzvah, where by doing that extra chumrah, he doesn't have any added beauty to his mitzvah, in which case he shouldn't do it. And therefore, in our case, with the scratching, where there is an issue of beauty for the mitzvah. The letters are nicer, they're straighter. If he has those scorings, so then there's no problem of showing off because the result is a hider mitzvah. Aval, but as he gets articulate. Aval, but in yesh ba is a hider mitzvah. Yesh ba is a hider mitzvah. If the result of this added stringency is that some mitzvah will be more beautiful, number one, or whether he's taking on that stringency as a barrier, v'geder, an offense, to hold him back from falling into doing something, a prohibition. And in nikahedit, he's not considered immature. That's actually great. He's taking on a stringency to make his mitzvah more beautiful, A, or B, he's taking on a stringency to make his mitzvah more beautiful. And in this case of the scoring, he's doing it to make it more beautiful, to make it straighter. And therefore, there was almost wink and nod, go make your lines. Even though he's not telling you straight up that you should, because the halacha is you don't have to. He's kind of winking and nodding, imagine yourself. Could you make it as nice? Could you make your letters as nice without the lines as you could with the lines? Most people couldn't. So he's kind of winking and nodding, go make the lines. Even though you're not required to, because it looks nicer. Then the Alter continues. That Zehu Tam, this is the reason. Kol hachumres, all of the stringencies, she'echmiru achronim, which the latter commentaries have added. I mean, over the later generations, ever since the Gemara has been canonized, if you will, has been accepted as the ipso facto halacha, and the truth is, to some degree or another, we don't have the power to make halacha the same way they did in the Gemara's time. Right? Davina Ravashi Sefer Ra. Right, that's the expression. But we do have chumras that have emerged since then. So what's that all about? All these stringencies that have emerged since the Gemara. So it says out there, but this is it. Shein achas mishtayim. It's for one of two reasons. Either they are the latter sages, latter rabbis, seeing the scenario of the people living in their time, added a stringency in order to put up a fence, so that people would not fall into violating some prohibition, even if it's the lightest, most minor prohibition of the sages. The later rabbis will put up a fence to protect you against that. So even a fence of the sages, which have become a halacha, later rabbis will come and put up a fence on that fence that you don't fall into their fence either. Yeah? When the sages saw that there was a need for that. That's one reason why we would have some of these stringencies post-Gemara. Or Mishum Hider, Le'ezeh mitzvah saseh, or because they wanted to help you make some mitzvah, some positive commandment more beautiful. Even if it's a rabbinic commandment.
No, aval.
Sorry. Aval bat, and here comes a very interesting thing, yeah. Aval bat, but makom shalei shayach hider. In a place where there's no, well, that's why it's interesting. But in a place where there's no hider, there's no beauty, it doesn't add to your mitzvah. Going, for example, hayosheh b'sukkah, someone who sits in the sukkah, v'shasak shalom when it's raining. Hareza hedjit, this is an example of someone who's being immature. Of hedjit. K'moshe's bar b'seh. He's making faces. As we shall explain in Simon Tafresh Tavates, the same thing as anything similar to that. We're doing the mitzvah, doesn't add anything to your mitzvah. So why are we Chabadniks sitting in the rain?
Exactly. That's what I was thinking.
Fantastic question. So I haven't.
This was written by a Chabadnik, no?
This is Alter Rebbe, the founder of Chabad.
The leader and the founder of the Chabad.
So it's funny. So I haven't seen Rebbe address this question directly. But there's a famous talk. Well, first of all, I should note that in Tafshin Lamed Vav, 1976, Sukkot 76. It was actually the first time my father spent Tishrei with the Rebbe in 770. And that year it rained apparently buckets and buckets for days on end Sukkot. And no, you could not sit in the Sukkah, which is impossible. And the Rebbe's Farbrengen was also indoors. I don't think the Rebbe said L'chaim during the Farbrengen, but the official Farbrengen was indoors. And the Rebbe wrote a note, it seems like in response to someone's question about how you can have simcha when you're not sitting in the Sukkah. And the Rebbe writes, because Kiddush you're required to make in the Sukkah. You make Kiddush in the Sukkah, and you said Asher Kiddush Adam Mitzvah, and you filled all your commandments, and now it's raining, you're not coming in, then it means Hashem is happy with the mitzvah you did already. He doesn't want you to come back in. It writes this in a letter somewhere. At any rate, but the issue of the custom is in Chabad to sit in the rain in the Sukkah.
I'm still shuddering.
And I haven't seen them address it directly, but I do know this: when the Rebbe gave that famous talk about sleeping in the sukkah. Why in Chabad we don't sleep in the sukkah? The Rabbi gave a famous talk to explain the halacha behind that. And in that talk, as an introduction, it's an edited talk, the Rabbi writes an introduction. It's kind of ironic. On the one hand, we're super Machmir in eating in the sukkah, everything, even water, and even fruits, which are not required to sit in the sukkah, but we do it anyway. It never continues. And even to do that when we're sitting even in the rain. When the Shulchan Aruch calls you a hedjit, the Shulchan Aruch calls you immature that we're using, and we're still sitting in the rain in the sukkah. And yet, how come it is we're not sleeping? So on that fact, that the Rebbe says that we sit in the sukkah even when it's raining, there's a little footnote, and it says to go see this Minchas Elazar. Minchas Elazar. The Minchas Elazar is a responsa written by the Munkatcher Rebbe, the famous Munkatcher Rebbe. And he wrote a responsa in response to somebody who asked him about the custom of not. I guess it was a Munkatch. The custom was not to eat in the sukkah on Shmini Atzeres, so it seems. And someone asked him about that, so he wrote a whole responsa. And towards the end of the response, he writes like this: now, with respect to drinking and eating in the sukkah in the rain. So he gives a whole explanation, going back and forth in halacha, proving from the Rif that nonetheless there's still a hiddur mitzvah. There's still not a hiddur mitzvah, not the right word, but there's still a mitzvah done. There's still a mitzvah done when a person eats in the sukkah in the rain. Proves from the Rif, whole pilpul, that even though there's no requirement, and you may even be called a hedjit because it doesn't add any hiddur mitzvah, but when you sit in the sukkah in the rain, you can still make a bracha.
That's a machlokes.
He proves,
That's
right?
Yeah. The others say no.
Yeah. So there are opinions.
Yeah,
there are opinions that you can make a bracha shek l'shem b'tzvaysav, and he has a whole back and forth about it. And the bottom line is that he writes that there's the meaning of the Baal Shem Tov, not just Chabad. I don't know if it's practiced today by other Chassidic circles, but the Minchas Elazar writes that it's the meaning of the Baal Shem Tov and his Talmudim to always be sitting in the rain, even though the Shulchan Aruch calls you a hedjit, and as the Kotzker Rebbe famously put it, call me a hedjit, but I'm not leaving the Eibishter Sukkah. Call me a hedjit, but I'm not leaving God's Sukkah. But at any rate, that's a separate discussion, as it's mentioned in Minchas Elazar proves from the Rif that it's still there's still a mitzvah done, and he goes to explaining why it is. But the point that I wanted to bring from the Shulchan Aruch here is by getting back to our halacha. We were talking about yesterday whether mezuzahs are required from the halacha from Moshe Rabbeinu to have shirto, to have this scoring. The halacha is tefillin are not required, but nonetheless, because the scoring adds beauty to your mitzvah, it still can be done. And what we emerge here is, irrespective of what your take is on this eating in the sukkah in the rain, what emerges here is a very beautiful idea about when you're taking on chumras. And you're taking on stringencies. One has to keep in mind one of two things. What am I doing this for? If I'm doing it to make my mitzvah more beautiful, or I'm doing it to hold myself back, that if I didn't do this, I might falter. Right? And as you put in the footnote there, the other option is he's doing it because he wants to show off. And if that's the reason why you're doing the chumrah, then not only is it not a plus, it's a negative. In which case we can add that's Chabadnik sitting in the rain, or a Chassid sitting in the rain on the sukkah is not showing off. Everybody else is doing it also. If nobody's doing it and you're doing it because you want to show off, that's one thing. But if everybody's doing it anyway, you're not showing off your piety because everybody's doing it. It's like I'm not showing off my family when I'm sitting in the rain. My whole family's sitting in the rain. There's no showing off, right? It's kind of like when it comes to tefillin Rabbeinu Tam. Wearing Rabbeinu Tam's tefillin, wearing the second pair of tefillin, there's the issue of showing off, but the reality is everybody's wearing Rabbeinu Tam. It's not considered showing off if everybody's doing it anyway. But still, keeping this in mind, ask yourself again and again and again and again, what am I doing this chumrah for? Am I doing this for real because I want the mitzvah to be more beautiful, or am I showing off? And if you're showing off, then better don't do it. God willing, we didn't get to do this, but God willing, tomorrow we'll get to the halacha of writing tefillin on klaf versus duchsustus versus gvil, and what the common practice is today.